Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to week 3 of Randwick City Council's Eco Living Festival. I'm Talibul, Coordinator Strategic Waste Management at Council, and I will be hosting this session. So this week is all about reducing your waste, learning practical ways to reduce waste at home, and recycle better. Today's event is Recycle Right, an important element of circular economy, and this is where we are heading. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Bijugal and Gadigal people who occupied Sydney Coast, being the traditional owners. On behalf of Randwick City Council, I acknowledge and pay my respect to the elders, both past and present, and to the Aboriginal people in attendance today. So before we start, few housekeepings. Today's session is being live streamed. If you would like to ask a question, please put this in the Q&A section. The Q&A function can be found at the bottom of your screen. We will endeavor to answer as many questions during the session as we can. After today's presentation, we hope you will be feeling inspired and equipped to take further steps in reducing your waste and recycle more by getting involved in some of Randwick City Council's current environmental programs. Look out for this at the end of this presentation. Also, at the end of the session, there will be a QR code link to our survey, and we'll also be sending a backup email if you miss this link. We would really appreciate your feedback. Over the next hour or so, Lisa and Ola will talk about what recycling options are available for you, how to recycle better, what is contamination, and they will try to demystify some of the confusions and some tips for multi-unit dwellings. Lisa and Ola are resource recovery officers at Cleanaway, Council's waste and recycling collection contractor. They will work alongside our education team and will be working closely with the community to help recycle better. So now let me kickstart talking about our achievements in recycling. In March this year, Cleanaway took over our waste recycling and FOGO collection services, and they have delivered bins to 60,000 properties, and specifically 41,500 recycling bins they have delivered to all the properties. So we have 60,000 properties altogether. Of those, about 38,000 are multi-unit dwellings, and the rest are single-unit dwellings. Cleanaway provides almost 21,400 recycling collection services every week. It's a big number. So over the last year, we have collected 9,900 tons of recyclables. That means each of our households have recycled 140 kilograms of recyclable. That is very good achievement. Our community is doing quite well. But here I have to mention one thing, that our latest waste audit has shown that since 2019, the contamination of recycling has gone a bit up. So this is where today Ola and Lisa will try to provide information so that we can get that right. Another important thing is that almost 16% of our red bin content is potentially recyclable. If we can move those recyclables from the red bin to the recycling bin, we would be able to increase our recycling tonnage by at least 2,000 tons. That would be great achievement. So now I will hand over to Lisa. Welcome, Lisa. Over to you.
Thank you, Talibul. So before we talk about what we can and we can't recycle, I want to talk about a bit about why it's so important that we do it. So we've been recycling for such a long time in Randwick that it's just a normal weekly activity to us now. And sometimes we forget to take a step back and think about why we're actually doing it. So firstly, by recycling, we're not sending our recyclables to landfills and wasting those valuable natural resources. So everything that we use in our daily life these days, it's been made from something that's been taken from the earth. So by recycling as much as we can, we are preventing taking those new raw materials again. So an example of this is it takes 26 trees approximately to create 1 ton of new paper. And paper is something that is so easily recyclable, it just makes sense to do it. Recycling also saves energy and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So this comes down to the fact that recycling is so much less labor and energy intensive compared to drawing on those natural resources. An example that I have shared on the screen is that aluminium production from raw material is one of the most energy intensive materials that we come across and has one of the most highest environmental impacts as well. And when you compare this to recycling aluminium, that takes 95% less energy than creating it from raw materials. And we can also say that aluminium it can pretty much be recycled infinitely. It'll never degrade. So it just makes sense to recycle those aluminium cans instead of drawing on those resources. But recycling is only part of the story. So before we go into more detail on recycling, I want to talk about some other ways that we can reduce our waste going to landfill. So you may have heard of the waste hierarchy before. This is a preferred order of reducing our waste based on what's best for the environment. So our highest priority is to refuse. So I've got some examples on the side of the screen here. So these are some questions that you need to ask yourself before you make purchases. So do I really need it? Can I borrow it? Is it a good quality item expected to last? And how long will I use it for? Our next option is to reduce. So an example of this would be if you're going shopping, check your pantry before you go and write a shopping list. And once you do that shopping, store that food correctly so it's not being thrown away in your FOGO recycling bin. Obviously, that's an okay option, but we want to stop it at the source first. Another way is to buy in bulk what you can buy in bulk to reduce on that packaging. The next option is to reduce. So look for items that are in reusable or refillable packaging. Buy secondhand products where practical. Reuse your plastic bags, your envelopes, use both sides of the paper. Use a reusable coffee cup. If you have kids or babies at home, look into using cloth nappies or rechargeable batteries for their toys. Another way is if one of those toys or something around the house breaks, maybe have a look online and see if there's a way that you're able to repair them. The next option is to regift. So this is when we are selling, giving away or donating our good quality items. So we'll talk about some options a bit later of how we can do this in Randwick, but giving to charities, giving to friends, selling very good quality items, they're all good options. The next step is finally to recycle. So as you can see, there are 4 other steps that we prefer to do before we get to recycling. But once we are recycling, we really want you to pay attention to the items that you can place in your yellow bin and place as many of those in your bin as you can, so we can recycle as much as we possibly can. Another option for items that can't go into that yellow bin, research and utilize any drop-off recycling programs that are in the area, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So on the other side of recycling is you really need to choose products that have been made from recyclable material as well. So if we want our waste to be recycled, then there has to be a market for it. We have to be buying those recycled material items as well. Finally, our last 2, our less preferred methods are recover and rot. So recover is just to do with recovering that energy produced at the landfill through gases and landfill processes, and rot is landfill, unfortunately. Very least preferred option. Okay, so we're going to do a bit of interaction. So we have a few polls in this session. The first poll is on waste reduction, and you should be able to, it's a multi-answer question. So you can click on any of the answers that apply to you. So do you do any of the following waste reduction or recycling activities? Excuse me. Take household batteries to my local library, use return and earn. Take a reusable bag to the supermarket. Donate good quality toys and furniture to charities. I'll just wait a couple more seconds. Looking like we all do quite a bit, so that's very nice. Okay, seems to have stopped going up. So it looks like we've done really well. So 91% of us are actually using a reusable coffee cup or a reusable drink bottle. And 85% of us take a reusable bag to the supermarket, and 64% of us recycle household batteries. Excuse me. So that's awesome. So we'll move on. Okay, so what we're here to learn about today. What can we put in our recycle bin? I'll start with a brief overview first, and then we'll go through the material types and then to some confusing or tricky items. So, excuse me, as we go, if you have any questions about what I'm talking about, just pop them in the Q&A and one of the team will answer it for you. So what can I put in my yellow lid recycling bin? We can have glass bottles and jars, paper and cardboard, metal food, drink and spray cans, plastic bottles and containers. So the easiest way I can explain this is we want bottles, containers and jars that have held a product from your kitchen, bathroom and laundry. So that's pretty much the easiest way. If it doesn't fall under that that meaning, then we probably can't put it in our yellow bin. So I'm going to start off with plastics because that is probably the one that people get most confused about. So we'll pull up the poll. This might take a second. There it is. So which plastic items can be placed in your yellow lid recycling bin? So you can only choose one option in this one. Let's give it a few more seconds. So the options were, first option was plastic buckets, baskets, and plant pots. Second option was shampoo bottles, yogurt tubs, and sauce bottles. And third option was all of the above. I apologize, I keep coughing. So most of the people have answered so far. So the answer for this question is shampoo bottles, yogurt tubs, and sauce bottles. Unfortunately, we cannot recycle plastic buckets, baskets, and plant pots. And this comes down to the way that they're processed at the sorting facility. So we really need to stick to that, the kitchen, bathroom, and laundry containers. And that's pretty much it, unfortunately. So we can't have any garage containers. So that's something I will point out, no garage containers, because they often hold something that's hazardous. So we'll move on to what we can recycle. Okay, so as I said, disposable rigid plastic bottles and containers that contain an item used in the kitchen, bathroom, and laundry. So these include milk, juice, and soft drink and water bottles, yogurt, butter, and ice cream tubs, berry and tomato punnets, takeaway food containers, sauce and dressing bottles, shampoo, conditioner, and body wash bottles, laundry liquid and detergent bottles, and cleaning spray bottles. So one, as you can see on the screen, it says keep them in 3D shape. So we don't want you squishing these containers. And the reason for that is when they're flat, they mimic soft plastics. So and soft plastics we really don't want in our recycling bin, because when they're flat and light, they get mixed in and contaminate our paper stream. So we really don't want that. Please keep them in their 3D form, and also make sure that they're clean, empty, and dry. Okay, so we've got another poll question, and this is on paper. While we're waiting for that poll question to come up, the reason that we really want that those containers empty and dry is we really don't want them food coming out or liquids coming out and damaging our paper stream as well. So the options for this one are magazines, laundry powder boxes and envelopes, shredded paper, long life milk cartons and disposable cups, or all of the above. So let's give a few more seconds. Okay, great. So this was a bit of a tricky one. So the answer is magazines, laundry powder boxes and envelopes, assuming that those laundry powder boxes are empty. So shredded paper is a tricky one. We can't accept it in our yellow bin. The reason for that is it's just too small. So these stringy bits, they get they're so light they get lost in the process. So they also get wrapped around all of our metal, our plastic. So the best option for shredded paper, pop it in your FOGO bin. Disposable cups as well. So disposable cups, they've got that I'm hoping you can see this. They've got that plastic lining on the inside. Makes it very, very hard to recycle. They end up in our paper stream, and we really don't want plastic in our paper stream at the sorting facility. So we'll move on. Okay, so paper and cardboard packaging that we can include in our yellow bin. So we really want newspapers, magazines, and junk mail, wrapping paper and cards, When it comes to wrapping paper, we don't want any cellophane and we don't want any plastic wrapping paper. So the easiest way is to give it a little tear. If it tears easy, pop it in the recycling bin. We want cardboard boxes, fresh milk and egg cartons, laundry powder boxes, and office paper and envelopes. With envelopes, if it's got a window, that's fine, still pop it in your recycling bin. The plastic on those envelopes are very easily removable, so that's fine. Actually, while we're on that topic, tissue boxes. The plastic in the tissue boxes, if you can't remove it, or it's not too much of a big deal as well. Okay, so now we'll move on to metals. We can pull up the poll. So we've got baked beans cans, soft drink cans and hairspray cans, spray paint cans, scrap metal, and pots and pans, or all of the above. A few more seconds. It's looking good, and everyone's got the right answer. Well done. So baked bean cans, soft drink cans, and hairspray cans. Those are the ones that we want in our recycling bin. Spray paint cans, we don't want these, but you should be able to drop paints off to our community recycling centre. Scrap metal and pots and pans, unfortunately, no, we cannot accept them in the yellow lid bin. And the same thing again comes down to the processing. Okay, so what metal do we want in our yellow bin? We want any metal food, drink, or spray can that's used within the house. So air freshener spray cans, baby formula tins, coffee and Milo tins, cooking oil spray cans, deodorant and hairspray cans, drink cans, food cans, insect spray cans, and pet food cans. So with foil trays, we really need those to be clean. So if you've had a barbecue and it's really dirty, unfortunately, we can't have those in the recycle bin. But if it's fairly clean, pop it in. With regular foil, scrunch up into a ball about the size of your fist. With spray cans, we really need to ensure that those are empty before we're recycling them. Same with our food and pet food cans, especially. Give them a little rinse, make sure they're clean, empty and dry, so we're not damaging that really good recyclable paper, and then pop them in. Okay, so another poll question, and this will be on our glass items. Okay, so which glass items can be placed in your yellow lid recycling bin? Drinking glasses, Pyrex, kitchenware, and light globes, vitamin jars, beer bottles, and peanut butter jars, or all of the above. And I really apologize for my coughing. I have been talking too much lately. I'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, we'll finish it there. So the correct answer is vitamin jars, beer bottles, and peanut butter jars. So unfortunately, drinking glasses and Pyrex, it's made out of a different type of glass than what we find in our bottles and jars. So they have different melting points and we just can't recycle them in the same way, unfortunately. Light globes as well, we can't accept those in the yellow bin. Okay, so what can we put in? What glass items can we include? All clear, green, and brown glass bottles and jars that contained a product in them, including beers, soft drink bottles, jam and other spreads, juice bottles, medicine and vitamin jars, pickle and olive jars, oil bottles, sauce jars and bottles, and wine bottles. So you can see there's a trend with all of these items. We really want the disposable containers, things that aren't designed to stay in your house for a long time, like the baskets and the light globes. We just want those disposable containers. Okay, so we'll move on. I think this is our last poll question, so this might be a little bit of a tricky question. So if a product has a triangle recycling symbol on it, it means I can place it in my yellow lid recycling bin. True or false? Okay, I think that might be everyone that's having a go. So the answer is false. So we'll move on to the next slide so I can show you the answer. So just because it has that little triangle on it doesn't necessarily mean that it can be recycled in your yellow lid bin. So that little triangle with the numbers inside, it just means it indicates what type of plastic it is, not necessarily that it can be recycled. So I can't stress enough that we really need to focus on, is it a container, bottle or jar that held a product from my kitchen, bathroom or laundry? If you do need a little bit more help, Planet Ark have released this Australasian recycling label. It's not on every product yet. It is on quite a few though. So this is what it looks like on the screen. It will show you recyclable, conditionally recyclable. So it'll give you a little bit of further instructions, or if it needs to go into your waste bin. Okay, so I've talked about what we can put in our yellow bin and a bit about what we can't. And these items that we can't place in our yellow bin, we refer to as contamination. So on this slide, you can see I've got quite a few images that we consider to be contamination in our yellow bin. I'm not going to go through all of these individually because we just don't have enough time. But I will go through a couple. If you have any questions relating to these, please pop it in the Q&A and we'll be able to answer it for you. So one of our big contaminant items is soft plastic. So plastic bags and chip packets, yeah, everything like that, bubble wrap. That is a massive contamination item. And I've mentioned it previously. It's because they're light and they're flat and they end up contaminating our paper stream. So Ola will go into this a bit more further on. But one of the big ones that we really don't want in our recycling is the batteries, the gas bottles and bricks. So these can cause damage to our trucks and they're also they're hazards. So batteries and gas bottles, they can cause fires in trucks and explosions at the sorting facility. So they're really quite dangerous. But we will talk about where you can take these for recycling further on in the presentation. One thing on this screen that you might be surprised about is meat trays. So meat trays often come in polystyrene material, and polystyrene is definitely not recyclable. Once it gets into the truck, it breaks up into lots of different pieces, and that's no good for the environment. So yes, another reason is because it's black plastic. So black plastic is the one color that is really hard to detect at our sorting facilities. I'm not sure if you can see this. I've got a meat tray here. Oh, no, it's too clear, but it's got the ARL symbol on it and it says put it into the garbage. And it's also just because of blood contamination. So it's something to be a bit mindful of. Okay, so I will move on. So our top contaminants in Randwick. So this is data from the recent audit that Talibul previously spoke about. So non-recyclable paper. So this can be tissues and paper towels and shredded paper, all of which can be put into your FOGO bin instead. Other things may be Soil pizza boxes, so they're perfect for your FOGO bin. Baking paper, unfortunately, things like that need to go into your red bin. Non-recyclable plastics, like we said, the plant pots, scrap pieces of plastic, anything like that, unfortunately, needs to go in your red bin. If you do have things like plant pots, you can contact the local nursery, see if they want to take them back. Recyclable glass, non-recyclable glass, also a big issue that we've already spoken about, and some other things. So liquids, this is a massive issue. So please make sure that you're emptying any bottles, so water bottles, soft drink bottles, anything, emptying it out before you put it into the bin. Electrical items, this might surprise some people, we see a lot of computers, toasters, kettles, so all of those things, unfortunately, we can't recycle in our yellow bin. Textiles is another one. So when we get clothing through our yellow lid bin, it gets really tangled up in the sorting machinery. So we really can't have that in our yellow bin. Obviously, we prefer to donate it, give it away. If you can't do any of those things because it's not good quality, there's also the option of taking things like towels and bedding to pet rescue locations. So I'm going to pass on to Ola now. He's going to take you through some common recycling behaviours and give you a few more tips and tricks, especially relating to apartments.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation, Lisa. I hope participants and attendees have been enjoying that presentation and gleaning a lot of information and message as possible on how to be better recyclers and to do it right. So as Talibor mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, Lisa and I are resource recovery officers with Cleanaway, the contract with Randwick City Council. And it has been a joy and a pleasure to interact with residents, with building managers, with strata committee members on ways that we can improve our recycling behavior and make sure that we recover as much resources through the use of our yellow bins, and also give those materials a new lease of life and turn them into reusable products. In the course of our interaction with the council and with residents and with a lot of people across the population, we've discovered that we have some common recycling behaviors, and with a bit of a tweak here and there, we can all become better recyclers. The first recycling behavior that we have observed is the plastic bagger. Now, this is a behavior that usually entails someone that has gone through the hard work of separating all the recyclables, giving it a quick rinse, and then they put it in a plastic bag and put that plastic bag into the recycle bin. Now, the thing with bagging your recyclables is that once it arrives at our resource recovery facilities where we're meant to put them into different streams, that bagged recyclables is taken as garbage. And depending on the volume of or the amount of bagged recyclables that we receive, there have been instances where, you know, a whole truckload comes up and it's rejected because there's just a lot of bagged recyclables in it. So this is a very key message to all of our residents and to everyone that is in attendance today. Do not put your recyclable materials into a plastic bag, because the moment you do that, as Lisa mentioned earlier, we can't recycle soft plastic, and everything you put into that plastic bag is then deemed as garbage, and it then ends up in landfill. And we are missing out on a lot of useful materials that could have repurposed, we could have reprocessed, and we could have reused as a good stream of material to make new reusable material. So please do not bag your recyclables. The other recycling behavior we've come across is the wish cycler. And I know at some point I have been on this in this category of recycling behavior because I wish everything was recyclable. The truth of the matter, though, is that our resource recovery facilities or materials recovery facilities are limited in the scope of the technology employed to recover some of these materials. And if we were to put everything we wish could be recycled into our yellow lid bins, we're just going to be then wasting a lot of space for the materials that are actually eligible. So our wish will at some point become a reality because there's been a lot of improvement in the recycling technology and the resource recovery technology. And further down the line, there will be some improvements where we'll be able to recover more resources through our resource recovery facility centers. But for now, if you are in doubt, please do not put it into your yellow lead bin, especially when you have a lot of composite materials that are made part aluminum, part paper, part plastic, part aluminum. Those are composite materials that are quite difficult to separate at the recovery centers. So please, if you are in doubt, put it in your red lead bin and leave it out of your yellow lead bin. The third behavior we've come across is the new recycler. And we found this to be the case with a lot of people that are relocating into the council area, be it from overseas or from a different council, where the recycling process is not as robust as what we have in Randwick City Council. And for some of these new recyclers, they're quite keen on doing the right thing, but because it's new to them and there's a whole lot of information out there, it could be a bit overwhelming. But be rest assured, because Randwick City Council has committed a substantial amount of resources and education officer to come across and help you with your recycling journey. So if you need information, if you're new to the council or you need information on things that can be recyclable, we've got a whole lot of resources that we can deploy to help you and improve your understanding of what materials are recyclable, what items are eligible to be placed into your yellow lead bin, and the ones that will have to be placed in your garbage bin, or the ones you could utilize all the recycling options that are available in the council area. As we're going to mention to you further down in the course of the presentation, the Community Recycling Center is an option. And so those are some of the things you might want to consider. So if you need information, be rest assured that the information is available. The resources are available to help you on your recycling journey. The last recycling behavior that we've come across is the influencer. In some other quarters, they call them resource champions or waste champions. And it is a pleasure and delight to tell this meeting here, the people that are on this meeting, that we've got a lot of champions in Randwick City Council. I think you can give yourself a pat on the back for that and give yourself a round of applause. And the influencer is not just someone who is doing right by themselves or by their apartment or by their community. They're also doing a lot of effort engaging other residents, other members in the community, in some cases utilizing meeting forums in the community center to drive conversation around recycling behavior and what people can do to improve their recycling. And like I mentioned earlier, our recycling behavior, knowing all we need to know about recycling, is a journey. And regardless of what level you are on your journey, we can always provide the support needed to help you improve your recycling behavior. On our next slide, we'll be looking at some of the things that we've found to be helpful tips, especially for our multi-unit dwellings. This is particularly necessary if you cast your mind back to what Talabo said at the beginning of the presentation. We've got a makeup of about 63% of the types of dwellings that we have in Randwick City Council being multi-unit dwellings. By multi-unit, it means that you have a lot of apartments in one building block, multi-level buildings. And because we know that space comes at a premium, in some of these buildings, the only common area where bins are stored, especially the yellow lead bins, is just in the basement of the building, or in some cases where they have bin rooms on each level of those multi-unit dwellings. They have a bin room where there's a chute system. And in some cases, you could find that there's space for a crate to collect recyclables. Now, the key thing, because if, for instance, your yellow lead bins are in your basement, sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect. There is no sense of ownership between the residents in that apartment and the bins being in the basement. So one way to make sure that we have as little contamination as possible in our recycling bin is to own it. And one key thing with ownership of your recycling bin is to have a sort of litter recycling bin in your kitchen or in your laundry, wherever you can fit that. That way, it's just like replicating the 3-bin system that you have in your bin bay or in your basement or wherever the major bins are stored. So let's say in your kitchen, for instance, you've replicated the 3-bin system where you have your Fogo caddy and you can put your food scraps into your Fogo caddy. You have your garbage bin where you can put all of the soft plastics and other materials that are not recyclable in there. And then you have your litter recycle bin where you can quickly give your eligible materials a quick rinse, make sure they are clean and put them into those bins. And then you could transport them to your maybe bin bay where you have it in your basement or in your bin room where you have it on the level of your apartment building and empty that bin into the yellow lid bin. That way we're ensuring that we have the purest stream of resources as much as possible. And that would also make sure that we're able to recover as much materials as possible, and then make sure that we're not reliant on sourcing virgin materials, extracting materials from the earth to process our materials again. We can easily recycle these pure resource streams and turn them into a reusable material. So it's very key that we own it. Ownership helps reduce contamination. We go on to the next tip. And this is a very simple tip. When you're disposing of your recyclables, as much as possible, make sure that you put your items that are recyclable into your yellow lid bin. Don't put them into your red lid bin. That's because when you do that, those materials are then lost because everything in your red lid bin is taken as waste that's just going to landfill. That'll be taking up a lot of space for materials that should have been placed in there. It can cause garbage overflow. And we're also taking up space in landfill that should not be taken up because these materials are easily recyclable and we can turn them into reusable material. So please make sure you put those items that are eligible, as Lisa has gone through the list earlier, make sure they go into your yellow lid bin and not your red lid bin. We go on to the next tip, and this is a very simple one. Flatten cardboards. Flatten cardboards. As we are all well aware, we just came out of the hard lockdown in some parts of Sydney. And one of the frequent calls we got from our residents was the issue of garbage overflow. And in a lot of cases, when we visited these locations to see what has happened, our residents have just left boxes unflattened in their yellow lid bin. And as you can imagine, this takes up a lot of space in the yellow lid bin. In that way, you are not able to place materials that are eligible for recycling into there because these boxes take up a lot of space. So it's a simple thing to do to flatten those cardboards. When you flatten them, they lose the 3D shape and they become, compact, and that creates space for other materials. And if you're like me, I go through most of my aluminum cans and my plastic bottles and pick out the ones that I can get a 10-cent refund on, and also take those out of my yellow lid bin. When you flatten your cardboards and your cardboard boxes, and you also take out your return and earn eligible bottles, you make a lot of room for other items like your jars and your, other materials from your laundry that can fit in there. So you create more space for that. So 2 key takeaways from all these tips that we've been talking about. Do not bag your recycling, and please flatten your cardboard boxes. That could go a long way in improving our recycling behavior and making sure that we recover as much resource from our yellow lid bin as much as possible. And just so you know, Randwick City Council employ dedicated education staff to provide recycling programs in apartment. Part of the recycling program plans that I have witnessed has been a tour of the community recycling center, where you get to see all they collect at the recycling center, and you see some of the processes that these materials go through to repurpose them and put them into use again, and turn them into reusable materials. And some of the things you can request from us are recycling brochures that gives you a whole lot of information that sort of summarizes all that we've been talking about throughout this entire presentation. You can also request recycling signage that you can put in your bin room, in your bin bay, and it serves like a last minute reminder to the residents, telling them of the eligible items they can place in their yellow bins and what to keep out. We also have recycling stickers that you can place on your notice board. You can place them directly on your recycle bins as well. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a good reminder just to rejig the memory and refresh our memory of what items we should place into our recycle bins. And we can also provide recycling collection calendars as well, especially for those that are new to the council area and they're not quite sure of their collection frequency. This is a good source of information to become conversant with when the trucks will be coming around to pick up your recycling and empty your bins when you place them on the nature strip. And we've got much more that we can do. So if you need information and you're not quite sure what to do with some items, please don't hesitate to give us a call. With just a phone call or an email away, and we will deploy as much materials and resources to help you on your recycling journey. We'll go on to our next slide and I'll hand over to you, Lise.
Yep. Thank you, Ola. Okay, so after you've perfectly sorted your recycling, of course, after this presentation, and presented it on your curb for collection, one of our trucks will come along and collect it. Something that lots of people wouldn't know is that our new trucks actually have cameras installed on them, so they can see when a bin has had contamination in them. So this is extremely useful for our education program. We can see the areas that may need a little bit more help, which apartment blocks might need a little bit more education. So that's a really helpful tool for us. So then the truck delivers these recyclables to the material recovery facility, and we call this the MRF for short. The recycling is weighed, tipped, and moved on to conveyor belts where staff actually remove the contamination by hand. So in that first step, they're pulling out bags of garbage, dirty nappies, gas bottles, all of these nasty things. So it's really important that we do recycle our waste properly, because it's not very pleasant. The machines, this then goes on to the next step where the machines sort the waste into different material types to be baled. So they sort them by a few different methods. So they use rotating discs, lasers, magnets, eddy currents, and even air to sort these materials into bales. Excuse me. So they then get, these bales get sent off to different factories. Some of them stay with the current, with the place that sorts them as well for recycling. So the sorted plastics, they're washed, sterilized, and then pelletized. So the pellets undergo a recycling process where they're added in with new ingredients to be turned into different products. So depending on the type of plastic that it was, they can be turned back into new bottles and containers, or they could be turned into different things like carpet, clothing, wheelie bins, and furniture. So our paper items, they are washed, de-inked, and turned into pulp. So during this process, that's when things like maybe like a staple or the window in the envelope, that's when that's going to come out. And then just like the plastic, they're added to new ingredients to create new products. So our paper can be turned into toilet paper, paper towels, newspaper, kitty litter, and even back into new cardboard packaging. For our steel and aluminium, that is sent away to be melted. So they melted into blocks and into sheets. So other than being returned back into new metal items, it can also be made into things like fencing, roofing, appliances, and even cars. For our glass items, so at the moment, glass is really hard to recycle. After it's been crushed and washed, it's quite hard to recycle. But Randwick have made a commitment that we are going to be recycling this crushed glass product into our local road bases. So I think that's pretty cool. Okay, so some alternative recycling options. So I think we've both spoken it already, the return and earn. So taking your eligible bottles and cans back to the return and earn vending machines and getting that 10 cents back. Places like Coles and Woolworths, a lot of you on this meeting probably already know about this, but they have recycle soft plastic bins at the front of these supermarkets where you can take your soft plastics, excuse me. It's a really easy way to take your soft plastics and recycle them because you can just bag them all up in a plastic bag and drop them off when you go and do your grocery shopping. We also have places like the Bower and reverse garbage where you can take back your anything that you don't need anymore around the house. So it's somewhere where you can donate things. So old chairs, old toys, anything like that to prevent it from going into landfill. We have a few drop-off zones around the LGA for mobile phones. One of them is the Council Admin Building on Francis Street at Randwick. We also have the Bowen Library at Maroubra. And you can also drop them off at places like Aldi and Officeworks. Excuse me. And I would really, really encourage you to have a look into places like Officeworks and see what else you can take there for recycling. Something that I don't have on the screen, 7-Elevens. So most 7-Elevens have coffee cup bins. So if you are still using disposable coffee cups, but I'm sure most people on this meeting are not, but if you are, you can take your cups back there to be recycled. So yes, that's a good idea. Let's move on to the last slide. So Randwick also has a community recycling centre, and this is located at 72 Perry Street in Matraville. And the purpose of our recycling centre is to collect all of that problem waste. So the waste that we don't want in our recycling bin and we also don't want in our red bin. So things like paint, gas bottles, motor oils and other oils, smoke detectors, fluoro globes and tubes, car batteries and household batteries and fire extinguishers. All of those things fall under our problem waste category. But we can also take other items such as e-waste, mobile phones, polystyrene, white goods, soft plastics, and wearable clothes. So if you happen to be closer to the community recycling centre than a Woolworths or Coles, you're more than welcome to drop off your soft plastics. Okay. So I will, so we have some time for some questions and answers. So I will throw to our panel to see if we have any questions that you'd like us to answer live.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Ola. Great presentation. I was following the chat box and Q&A. Looks so many questions, and questions were answered. I think everybody is benefited. Now probably we'll look into any Q&A issues. So any questions we'll try to answer. We are working on this. Let's see what is left. The background, our team has done very good job, responded to, if not all, most of the questions.
That's great.
So let's see what is left. And I would request Nicole to ask those questions if anything is left.
Hi everyone. There is actually a couple of questions. Perhaps I might throw it back over to anyone else in the panel. We have a question from CP. It says, what do we do with A4 paper?
Yep. A4 paper can be recycled. So we generally like to say anything smaller than maybe a quarter of an A4 paper can't be put into your yellow bin, but A4 paper is perfectly fine.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Also, we have a comment from Jerry. He says that a random lady goes through yellow bins and removes all the bottles for the 10-cent deposit. Does this improve the recycling rate, or is it a positive thing, or is it discouraged by council? Question.
Okay, I can answer that. So thank you for that question. New South Wales state government has put in place this return and earn program. The main objective is to reduce litter and also get some of those items recycled properly. So it is positive. If you can take suitable items to those return and earn facilities, they're usually clean and can be recycled easily. And that reduces the pressure on our yellow recycling bin. So it's all positive. Keep using that.
Okay, I think that's all. The only other couple of questions is some contact details. Do we have a page to show contact details if someone wants to get hold of the waste department?
Yeah, so Nicole, you could put our strategic waste address, just strategic waste management, Randwick City Council. So if with that title, they send emails to council, those emails will be forwarded to us and we'll respond accordingly.
Okay, thanks, Tal. Oh, sorry, we've got one more. We've got Asha asking about long life milk cartons. Perhaps that's Lisa or Ola want to answer that question.
So it depends what council you're in and what MRF that they're using. So I've recently found out that Visy actually makes their own long life cartons. So they're quite interested in recycling those and turning them back into new ones. So that's applicable to Randwick. It is a special item though. So in other councils they can't because of those different layers, but with our council we can.
There are a few more questions at the chat box.
So I've got Daniel asking about cartridges.
I believe you can take them to Officeworks. Does anyone want to?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah?
Officeworks takes back cartridges, and I think there's a litter scheme going on also at our community recycling centre, where you can return some of those cartridges as well to that location.
And we've had a few questions actually just regarding lids on bottles and containers. Can someone just give us a bit of a sort of an overall answer, just depending on the type of material and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so for plastic bottles, our processor has advised to keep them attached, leave them on, just make sure that the container is empty first. If you do have like a margarine tub, that kind of thing, definitely keep it attached, because if they're not attached, that lid is going to be quite flat. And like I said, we want those 3D containers, so definitely keep that. For things like, just say if you have a glass jar and an aluminium or a steel lid, you can separate those. However, because we have magnets and eddy currents, those lids are still probably going to be picked up. For things like a steel container where you've peeled off the lid, if you can drop it inside the container and just close it, just pinch the top shut so that you can, so that can be recycled. Does anyone else want to add to that? Nope.
Thanks, Lisa. Arthur's asking, where should we dispose of empty or damaged gas lighters?
That's a
Good questions coming through.
Yeah, that's
What was the question again?
Where do we dispose of empty or damaged gas lighters?
Those long ones that you click and yeah, I'll have to maybe throw that to one of you guys. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, we will get back to that question and we'll respond. So there are 4 or 5 more questions. Okay. Yeah, there is a question from Jerry. So random lady goes through yellow bins and removes all the bottles for the 10 cent. Does this improve the recycling rate?
Oh, you've answered that one.
Okay, that has been answered.
Yeah. I think that potentially it would do it running out of time, but yeah.
Yes, so I think it is almost 2 o'clock. Yeah, I think Lisa and Ola did very good job. And at the back, Nicole, Anil, Annie, they have been responding to all the questions. Looks great. I'm sure everybody was benefited, but we are open for any other questions. Any questions you have, you can send to Randwick email address and just put strategic waste management in the subject. Then we'll get those questions and we'll respond to those questions. So thank you very much. How do you feel now? I'm sure you're feeling inspired. Your awareness has increased and you will do good job. And now, as I said at the beginning, you can participate in council's environmental programs that will benefit you personally and that will benefit council and the whole community. So you can go to Fogo Like a Pro, that is for Fogo. If you get involved in that, you can help yourself, you can help council, you can help your friends, neighbors, and the community will be benefited and the environment will be benefited. We have another program, is a Plant With Us. Please get involved. And you can join PharmaBees and Bushcare. That will be great. And you could apply for sustainability rebates and you will be benefited through that program and the environment will be benefited. So thank you again. I really appreciate your participation. We saw more than 100 participants registered and more than 50 participated. It is not easy to participate during the middle of the day. Everybody is busy, but looks you want to know more. And here we are to help you more. So now the last thing is, as I mentioned at the beginning, what did you think? If you scan the QR code, that will take you to a link and answer some of the questions. So thank you very much. And we'll be closing the session for today. Thanks a lot.
Thanks everybody for coming. This survey will be coming to you in an email as well. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.